the most important thing startups need to learn is structure. The most important thing large organizations need to learn is decentralization.
Nice one.
And it's the inverse, because if you're a startup, what you're looking for is speed and effectiveness. Structure gives you that. If you're a large organization, what you're looking for is agility and adaptability. Decentralization gives you that.
Thank you so much, Vusi. Now let us transition to business. You know, I've been watching you. You've been doing masterclasses right here in South Africa. And I'm thinking, when are you going to come here? That's a big question. Not only in Zimbabwe, but in Bulawayo in particular, because your Zulu sounds nice on those. And Bulawayo,
Yes.
close to Zulu is
It's Ndebele, that's right, yeah.
You bring quite interesting insights where you talk of these big businesses that think bureaucratically, and then the new guys that are coming, the starters, and you're saying the big businesses should be thinking like new guys that are coming into the market. Take us through, why should I be thinking like that? Why this paper should go through this bureaucratic process for this thing to be done?
So, so it's interesting that, we've now done the masterclass as far as Tanzania.
Right.
And I'm going to be doing one in Uganda in a week or so. So these masterclasses have certainly outgrown what was my wildest imagination. But I think the premise behind the masterclass was actually very simple.
Yep.
It was, I think a lot of what we think today as premium information and knowledge is actually commoditized.
Yep.
If you look at all the content you learn in an MBA course,
Yep.
you can Google it.
True.
You literally can Google marketing module, MBA, Harvard Business School, and it'll show you the marketing module for the MBA at Harvard Business School.
True.
Right. So why do people pay then if the content is available?
Yep.
I think it's not just about the content, but it's about how that content is delivered. And so the reason we do the masterclasses the way we do them, there are a couple of rules at the masterclasses. Probably the most important one is that there are no presentations allowed. So you watch a masterclass, you'll never see me use a presentation. The masterclass is probe-led,
Right.
not presentation-led.
Right.
Presentation-led means I presume the information you need to hear. I prepare a presentation and I come and present it to you. Probe-led means I make no assumptions about what you need to
Are you
hear.
telling me you come on stage there?
Completely unprepared.
Wow.
Everything you see happens. It's a process of discovery. It's like a market. It's like a stock exchange. People come on the day, and somebody wants to buy a share, and somebody sells a share. That's exactly what happens. Completely unprepared. People walk in, and somebody puts up their hands and goes, "I have this question."
Yeah.
What is interesting, Jonah, is everybody has the same question.
Yeah.
We just don't know how to verbalize it. So Vusi gets up and says, "I've got this marketing problem," and then you go, "I actually didn't realize it, but I've actually got the same marketing problem in my business." And so in that, there is the internal process of learning because somebody else has asked the question. Then to your final question. So the most important thing startups need to learn is structure.
Right.
The most important thing large organizations need to learn is decentralization.
Nice one.
And it's the inverse, because if you're a startup, what you're looking for is speed and effectiveness.
Right.
Structure gives you that.
Yeah.
If you're a large organization, what you're looking for is agility and adaptability. Decentralization gives you that.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot that leaders of large businesses can learn from managers of startups, but there's a learn from leaders of large businesses. And what we try to do with the masterclass is to create an environment where these two kind of fuse together,
Right.
where you teach the entrepreneur that actually there's a lot you can learn about how big business leaders run their businesses.
Yeah. There's one thing that we don't get from you, right? I just been thinking, why doesn't Vusi create us a documentary of his own so that we can know, not the Vusi on stage. Yes, we understand the temerity, the sagacity, and the ability on stage, being articulate and confident enough. Yes, but Vusi, are you telling me that you don't have a story before this Vusi that we know now?
Yeah, there's always a story.
And what's the story?
I mean, yeah, look, so my second book, Vusi, by the way, is about that. What I did in the second book is I just to take you a step back, when I did the Magna Carta, at the time, my publisher was already of the view that we should do a book about Vusi.
Right.
And I resisted that for one very simple reason, because I think as Black Africans, we have to worry about occupying spaces we've never occupied before.
Right.
The world of literature, business literature, that is globally relevant and universally acceptable. How many Black African authors do you know in that space?
Yep.
And so the reason we went with the Magna Carta first was because it was important for me to go, we can do this too.
Yep.
We've produced poetic pieces, we've produced dramatic pieces, we've written literary pieces, we've done the biographies, but this space of business, innovation, shift, dynamics, change, disruption, we're absent here.
Yep.
I'm going to do something here. The second book, Vusi, then became, so now that I've done this work, let me tell you a bit about me.
Yeah.
And that book is written a bit about me. It's a bit about my background, where I come from, how I was raised, how I see the world, why I see the world the way I see the world. And it's, it's freely available on the shelves for anybody who wants to read it. It's that book for me, I have to tell you, was also much, much harder to do than Magna Carta. Magna Carta is a clinical study. It's a hypothesis, and it's evidence-based, and you show people what the evidence is. This one was a lot more introspective. And it was me looking at myself as if I'm not myself and questioning, why do I make the decisions I make? Why do I see the world the way I see the world? I opened the book by talking about the world and how we see it. Now, when I was in primary school, we had a principal who taught us that the world wasn't round, it was geoid, which is an interesting expression. But the simple idea is that the world actually is not as we think it is. The world is as we are. If I take a perspective of the world that is glim, negative, and pessimistic, then that'll be my reality. And it sounds very airy-fairy, but it's true. It's true too for business leaders. If you think the market's going to be bad, the market will be bad. If you think the market's going to be good, the market will be good. But the market will be whatever you believe it'll be.
Let's go to brand thinking. I love the VT brand. It's growing and it's glowing. Then someone out there is thinking, okay, how do I grow my brand? How do I make myself known and visible enough? And how does Europe begin to love a boy who is rural born in Zimbabwe or South Africa? How do I get to those markets? I think I've just been following you, and your brand seems to be going up and up. How have you been keeping that constant?
I don't worry about the brand growth. Zero. It's a zero conversation piece for us. You can ask my team, they'll tell you.
All right.
I mean, so we do kind of things like we'll look at the number of new followers that we're getting, but nobody has a so let me give you a great example from a social media perspective. Right. So we track social media and growth of the brand in social media. We know the kind of average growth rates we should generate, but we're not here with a stated goal to get to 10 million users on YouTube.
Okay.
Because you can't achieve, that's a fallacious outcome. You can't achieve 10 million subscribers on YouTube. It's what you can achieve is the level of engagement per video that you post. You can achieve the type of comments that you want on a piece of content that you post. So for me, I've never worried about the brand. I think if you worry about the work and putting in the work, brand growth is a consequence, right? So today we do live in this time where people want the 100,000 followers on Instagram. Exactly. They want the speaking events in the US. That's an outcome. It's not an input. If you want to be invited, if you want to be invited to speak at a conference in the US, write about something Americans want to hear. So focus less on being invited and focus more on the content that you're generating.
You reminded me of, it should be Jim Rohn, if it's not Brian Tracy, who says, you don't need to worry about time, but you need to worry about the value you add into time. So in other terms, you're simply saying we should worry about the value that we give to this generation of our communities. I
promise you now, worrying about brand growth is a non-starter, especially if you're a young African who wants to build a globally relevant brand. You have to worry about meaning. What do you stand for? What do you want to achieve? Absent of you, what's missing? You'd be very surprised how many people want to build a brand but can't answer that question. What's missing without you? Now, if there's nothing missing without you, then why do you exist? right? And I think those for me are more important questions than how do I grow my brand.
Okay.
Brand growth is a consequence. It'll come, you know.
No, probably a young African will want to start today and start charging today. What's your take on starting a business and making it roll and bring the value without necessarily looking for, probably, let's say I'm being called as a speaker, and then someone invites me and they're saying, okay, Jonah, come and speak on pro bono. As a starter, probably someone might say, no, I need to charge these guys because I'm coming to speak for an hour. What would you say to someone who's starting and they want to have money instantly?
I'd say it depends on where you are.
Okay.
I'd say be careful of money. Money is more, you know, more talent has been wasted at the altar of money than you would imagine. So be careful of money as the driver.
Right.
Again,
Yeah.
people are focusing on the outcome, not the input.
Yeah.
So if I'm being invited to speak, the question I ask myself is, but where am I in my journey?
Yeah.
A lot of people forget I'm 35 years old in a month.
Okay.
I won the world championship in public speaking when I was 17.
Right.
So just so we're clear,
Yeah.
if you're getting on a stage with me, I'm bringing
Yeah.
35 minus 17 worth of years, that's 18 years of experience
Yeah.
into the stage. So if you look at what I charge,
Yeah.
it's 18 years of experience. It's 59 countries. It's 5 of the 7 continents.
30 minutes on.
It's not, that's,
Yeah.
so I think the point people miss is people go, oh, well, he makes that.
Yep.
I want to make that. Yeah, but our journeys have been different.
True.
You know, it's almost identical to me saying, I want to race Usain Bolt.
Yep.
I think I can beat him. No, I can't. When did Usain Bolt start running? How many hours has he trained?
Yep.
What has been the structure of his training regiment? How many hours of sacrifice, lifestyle sacrifice, has he put in just so he can run a 100-meter dash in less than 10 seconds?
Yep.
Even if I train for 5 years, I'm not going to run the way Usain Bolt runs, right? And so I think that's the mistake people make. People look at the outcome. I want to charge X. That's fallacious. It's not about what you want to charge. It's what value do you want to add. And again, I'll ask the question: if you were not there, what would be missing?
Yeah.
Because if nothing's missing, then there's no need for you to exist.
Exactly. No, there's a statement I should have read about Twix, which says, when you're valuable enough, you charge what you want. And then, but if you're not valuable, the market decides. That's for another day. Vusi, let me ask you a very personal question. Let's go to presidential thing. I've been thinking, Africa still needs leaders. I mean, presidential leaders. We need leaders like Vusi. Why don't you every time think I want to take on the South African presidential? I think it's very controversial and very personal enough.
I mean, if I had $1 for every time I get asked that question, you'd be surprised how wealthy I am. Maybe my job should be to charge people to ask me to be the president, because that's actually where I'd make money.
Yep.
So here's my take on this. I think leadership is a place of service and not a place of self-acknowledgement.
True.
And I think we are where we are because we have had too many leaders who are self-obsessed and are not really worried about service, right? And so that's why you kind of get this people going, why don't you do it?
Yep.
There is one fallacy though, Jonah, which I think most Africans need to be aware of. Africans suffer from this hang-up of the liberator. So we have this liberator hangover.
Yep. True.
We're always waiting to be liberated by the liberator.
Yeah.
For Zimbabweans, it was Robert Mugabe. For South Africans, it was Nelson Mandela.
Right.
And for other parts of the continent, it was different people at different time. Whether you talk about Nkwame Nkrumah or the Upright Man, each and every single part of the continent has had a liberator. And so our relationship with political leaders is that they must liberate us.
Yep.
But I think it's about time Africans themselves realized
Right.
that their greatest liberator is themselves.
Okay.
And it's not until we reach that moment that we won't start asking for great presidents, but we'll start asking for great presidencies.
Right.
And that's the power, by the way, of the United States. The power of the US is that whilst there is a great focus on who the president is, there's an even greater focus on the system of presidency, what they call the COG, the continuity of government. And so we just don't have that thing yet. So why don't I run for? Yeah, I just think my time and talents are better spent at the moment doing what I'm doing. I just think I'm better utilized in my space right now.
Right.
I think I'm growing faster where I'm at right now. And I think I am in a place where I have called to be right now.
Okay.
Might change in future, but I just don't see politics as the pinnacle driver of change in people's lives.
Right.
And we know it isn't, because much of our continent has been politically liberated, and yet we are in a quagmire of low economic growth for many of our continents, a lack of economic opportunities for the most competent and talented people, because we've built economies around connections and who you know rather than what you know. Nepotism and corruption. And I think that's where we're at. I just think my time and talents right now are better spent working with business leaders, young business owners, about how do we build an economic future for the continent that is inclusive and one that we can be proud of.
Right. Let's go to legacy thinking, which is hopefully the final question for the day. You know, there might be a girl in Diepsloot now who's saying, you know, I'm right here seated, I don't know what my next meal will come from. You know, there's a girl in Binga, which is in Zimbabwe, who's thinking, okay, you know, I'm right here in this bush. You know, I usually tell people my story where I say, you know, we grew up in a poor family. That even the poor do call us poor. But I didn't just sit on poverty and say, okay, let me die here. I said, Jonah, you have to wake up. There should be something better out there. The legacy thing, we need this legacy thing. We don't need to think about only the now and the pains of now, but we need also to think of what probably Henry Ford thought when he was creating a Ford car, which we are using now. So about legacy, tell us more about legacy.
I think we have to be careful not to delegitimize what are very legitimate structural exclusions that people suffer. So I'm very careful about imposing myself onto somebody else's lived reality and saying to them, but you still have power. I'm very careful of that. I think if you're a young black girl living in Diepsloot and your reality is as you've described it, then it's disingenuous and dishonest for Vusi to go pull yourself up by the bootstraps. I think it was Martin Luther King that says the Negro has been handed a check and told to pull himself by the bootstraps, but he doesn't even have boots. So we have to be very careful of saying to people, you can do it, purely out of sheer force and will. You have to recognize that we come from a past where there was a systematic and structural exclusion of a people, and that systematic and structural exclusion of that people was not only implemented, but it was enforced. So if you didn't agree, you went to jail, you were killed, right? And those structural exclusions still permeate in our lives today. If you look at where my firm has offices, it's not in a place where that girl can walk across the road because of the way this country was built. So I'm very careful of saying to people who live in that reality, oh, you can do it too. It's fine. It really isn't. I don't think the conversation would be to that person, actually. I think the conversation would be to more people like me who have and who've been given the opportunity. It'll be a simple question. How many opportunities have you created? It's a very simple question. How many hand ups have you given? How many new spaces have you opened in the room for somebody else to sit? Jonah, you have to recognize that even the world of business, the very boardrooms we occupy, were not designed with us in mind. And for a lot of us to be in those boardrooms, we've either had to change who we are or to change the boardroom. And that's very difficult. I can't tell you how many boards I've declined invitations to because of my reading the complexion of the people in the room and recognizing that I would not be in a position to effectively shift the dynamics of that board so that it recognizes the structural exclusions of the average South African, particularly the black African person. So my answer to that question is, I don't speak to the poor and to the downtrodden and tell them to pull themselves up. I speak to the privileged and to the powerful, and I ask them, who have you helped up? Which door have you opened? Which seat have you brought into the room that was previously unoccupied and put a person in that room who wouldn't have been in there otherwise? Because we don't have the right to say to people, you can do better, unless we're creating the opportunities for them to do better. And that is the fundamental problem with where much of our continent finds itself, is we just aren't creating the opportunities. I think if you create the opportunities, people will rise up. They'll meet the opportunity halfway. The problem now is the opportunities are non-existent. Look at we have 11 million in South Africa alone, 11 million South Africans unemployed. 11 million South Africans unemployed. 2% of the tax base pays 78% of the personal income tax. These kind of imbalances are just not sustainable. And so the 2% has to ask themselves, how do we bring people up so that it's not just 2% of us? Those of us who are employed have to ask ourselves, how do we make this 11 million 5.5 million? How do we halve it? I think that's the deeper, broader, more genuine agenda than say to the poor person, just pull yourself up, because that gospel has been sung and it doesn't work.
Thank you so much, Vusi.
Thank you, Squire. I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming. Good man.